He's Bob Pollock, joining us from a remote site where he is watching the snow. No, you're not watching any snow yet, are you?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Okay.
It's damp.
But the folks at NOAA, the National Weather Service, they've been watching the forecast. What are they saying about Indiana County over the course of the next 3 months or so, the winter months?
Yeah, the winter months, and we almost got to this last week, but we didn't quite make it. But the temperatures are expected to be above normal, and that's for the period January through into March. And then they have us that it can go either way. We've got an equal chance of getting more or less rainfall than normal.
So we're right on the line, huh?
So, yeah, we're kind of right on the line. We're often on the line for some reason. But
I wonder
but unfortunately, it seems like we're always we're either on the wetter portion of the side of the equation.
Huh. We're on the wetter, you're saying, the wetter portion.
Well, yeah, that's how it seems to work out, and it definitely did this year.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. You can call Bob at 479-1160. He's taking up the other line, 349-WCCS, to talk with us today, but we can get you on with him, and you can ask him your questions about lawns and gardens and things. So with that sort of a weather forecast, it's not like you can prepare ahead of time for an extra cold winter or an extra wet winter. You pretty much have to be ready for whatever comes, don't you?
Well, that's true. And we were in a meeting yesterday talking about fruit production and especially the tree fruits, and this year's just been really a challenge because of all the wet weather pretty much across the whole entire state. There's only a couple little, I guess, as you go farther north in the state, like Erie didn't have as much rainfall as we did, or many other parts of the state this year. But as you think about you're growing a perennial crop, and with the moisture levels in the soil and complete dampness all the time, you start to wonder about, okay, what do we need to be thinking about or looking for in our trees next year as maybe signs that these trees are under stress. One of the things that's happened is you may see off color. We're not sure about, because the trees set up their flower buds and their leaf buds for next year are already right there on the plant now. Mm-hmm. And as they lose their leaves in the fall, that process has been completed, so those trees are ready for spring. But are the trees under stress that we maybe couldn't see a lot yet? If it stays wet the rest of the winter, is that going to cause some roots to die? And then the tree's not going to be as strong next spring. The other thing is going into dormancy. Are the trees going to, because they've actually, in some places they've harvested fruit, and then the trees started to put new leaves on.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, so you look at winter dormancy, and are we going to have issues there? Now, that'll depend on the weather we get. So if we stay cooler and have more typical temperatures in the fall, that we can get things hardened off and prepared for winter, we'll maybe be okay. But if that doesn't happen, and we get a quick cold snap, we're in a little bit of a warm period now, but if it really turns cold quickly, that could create issues for those buds, on fruit trees as well as other plants.
Well, yeah,
so there's all kind of things that are possibilities, and we just have to be mindful and be thinking about that as we go along here.
Yeah, name another November where you look outside and the majority of the trees are still green. The leaves haven't even started to change, and now trees are trees are dropping leaves now that are still green.
And we've had trees that dropped leaves almost a month ago.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really, really a weird situation, and you wonder if for the long-term viability of in these terms, next year's fruit crop we're talking about, but the long-term viability, if this becomes a pattern every year, then what does that do to the way these trees produce and reproduce?
Right, and do we have to, as people make new plantings and, they take out older plantings and put new ones in?
Uh-oh. Where'd you go?
Do
There
we have to look for different sites? Do we have to really look at our soil types and our sites and pick ones that are more conducive and drained and aren't going to hold as much moisture?
We lost you for a second there. I was afraid you'd been overtaken by some winter beast. Oh, he's not there now. Mr. Robert, are you there?
Oh, did my signal?
Yeah,
hear me?
Yeah, you're in and out. We're losing you here.
All right.
All right.
I'm on the. Must have hit a bad spot.
Yeah, you're still in it. Bob Pollock on the line with us this morning. You can call him at 479-1160 if you have questions. I want to ask you this question because it gets to this season of the year where you've done so much hard work in your garden. You've hilled those potatoes up. You've preserved those cabbages to this point, and you got to get them put away for the winter, and you want them to last as long as you can. Onions, another thing. There doesn't seem to be a really good way to keep those onions from sprouting shoots and going soft on us. Talk, if you would, for a little bit about preserving those wonderful items of produce that we've grown all summer long and making them last as long as you can into the winter.
Okay. Yeah, and some things will store better than others. Some of the winter squashes and things are really good crops to store. The more typical, the Spanish onions tend to have a shorter lifespan and aren't going to store as well. So you need to use those kind of first, and then other types of onions that are going to store better. They've got a harder skin on them, less moisture content in there. They're able to store better, and it does vary by crop. If you take those winter squashes as a group, we like to harden those off. We want to get that rind firmed up. And so when you harvest those, they need to go into a warm area for a week or so that that skin can kind of dry down and get tough. And then that helps protect the meat of the squash inside. If those stay soft, then we're probably going to see those go downhill faster. They're going to lose moisture and they'll start to decay. So getting those things hardened off, and even onions, you need to dry those down too, because you can have, especially this year with all the moisture there, everything sucked up as much moisture as it can, and sometimes more than it needs. Mm-hmm. And so we need to, when we harvest that, get that in a drier spot with lower humidity and a warmer spot so that we can kind of get it to lose some moisture on the outside, harden up, and then they will store better. Every vegetable has a range, both moisture and temperature, that they prefer to be stored in so that you can get the maximum life out of them. And if we, a lot of times we're not set up to do that anymore. It used to be people had, really cold cellars or they had storage areas outside that they dug into the ground. Mm-hmm. And you can still see those around if you know to look for them. You'll see this little hump in the ground, and there's maybe a door going into looks like, a tunnel. But people would build those because they would stay cool. They had the protection of the soil, so they didn't freeze. They might eventually freeze, but in most cases they would keep things, above freezing. There'd be enough moisture in there that all those crops would store all winter long. And then today, where we've got heat in our houses and basements and everything, and even our garages sometimes, those don't make the best conditions to store a lot of things. Yeah. So just pick the vegetables you're trying to store, and then there's a whole bunch of charts and things that it's easy to look up, for a particular vegetable, what the storage temperature range needs to be, as well as humidity range, and then just try to meet that the best you can. Potatoes, some things aren't as, you don't worry about light as much, but potatoes need to be in the dark. And that's oftentimes why they don't last as long. When we bring them home, we maybe, leave them in a plastic bag, and so that's not always the best. And then if they're in areas where they get natural light or artificial light, they are going to start to break down quicker. They'll start to sprout sooner. Whereas if you had them in cooler temperatures and in the dark, they're going to last a lot longer.
Okay. All right. So those are some things to consider. Let's be able to eat those things for as long as we possibly can, huh? Have them at our disposal.
That's right.
All right, sir. Thank you so much.
Hey, you are welcome.
He is Mr. Bob Pollock. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend.
All right. You too.
It is AM 1160 WCCS 101.1 FM. Indiana in the Morning is presented, as always, by First Commonwealth Bank.